there, welcome back. My name is Sheldon McLeod, and this is Thinking Out Loud, and is presented to you here exclusively by the Saltwire Network. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening in. And there are so many topics that come up run of the day. Talk about things like, well, just take, for example, my ride into work this morning. Traffic on Highway 103 at the 102 interchange was backed up big time. And I suspect part of this is more and more of us are heading back to the office to work since the pandemic has, in a lot of ways normalized working from home. But I think there's that office culture that people miss. So here we have bus lanes that, well, there are some challenges with transit. So the idea was that increasing the bus lanes on Bayers Road was going to help things move more quickly. And there are constant challenges, conversations to be had. And it's a real pleasure to be able to speak with someone who has had some experience on council as the representative for District 13. She's also the Deputy Mayor of Halifax Regional Municipality. And it's a real pleasure to welcome Pam Lovelace to the conversation. Hi, Pam Lovelace. How are you?
Hi, great to be here and great to see you. It feels like sometimes, we don't get to see each other, but when we're on the screen, that's just as good, right? It's nice to see you, Sheldon.
Was it a surprise there was so much interesting conversation about transit and making things work more efficiently for people who might not have a vehicle in HRM? You must hear that a lot, being the councillor from District 13.
So I've been living in and off, the peninsula and in Halifax for 30 years. So I can tell you that we've always been having this conversation about transit, especially when, as a young person living in Dartmouth, wanted to be able to get to Queensland Beach, for example. You've got to have a car. There's no beach bus. And certainly the issue is compounded when you have accidents. And, as you just mentioned, there were issues this morning, and certainly the rain didn't help. There were, vehicle collisions on various 101, 103, 102, and that, of course, backs up traffic. Obviously, we have, a system in HRM that has relied on the density to support the transit from a financial perspective, but also the ridership. In the rural areas, we haven't had the ridership because people are required to have cars in order to live in the rural areas. And so, you got to bump out the convenience of having a car from going to point A to point B, as opposed to being on a bus, which is you've got to wait, you've got to go maybe get a transfer, and so on. So, at the same time that we're building a transit system that meets the needs of all of this huge municipality, we also have to be cognizant of the cost of doing that and do so with the means that we have, and not put too much burden on the property taxpayer.
Is this not, though, a perfect storm in some ways? And I ask that because you were recently at a conference with municipalities, representatives from, across the country. And when we have transit in Halifax, the president saying, we have a challenge with trying to get workers, that we have to cancel trips because we don't have enough staff. And then we have the people who are coming back to work trying to make their way with the high price of fuel and all of that. And maybe they've had to move because of the rent. So it feels like, we're struggling right now in HRM, but it may be similar situation in other parts of the country too?
Well, there's definitely a labor shortage across the country. And there's not one municipality, one city across the country that isn't dealing with a labor shortage in all industries. And transit happens to be one of those ones. But keep in mind too, Sheldon, we live in a culture we haven't had, cross-border transit. So the public transit that exists in Halifax is in Halifax. But there's so much difficulty to be able to get from Bridgewater or to get from the Valley, using a rideshare service, for example. We haven't had provincial investments in transit. And so the municipalities have been doing what they can to provide that, very, very important public transit. But without having partners at the provincial and federal level, municipalities are stuck. And here in Nova Scotia, we are behind the times. There are great examples across the country where provincial budgets have been used to advance public transit, to assist community members from, commuting, let's say 40 to 60 minutes outside of the urban area, and we just haven't had that. So when the province announced this new regional transportation committee, HRM was looking forward to seeing what advances we could have using this committee, but unfortunately that they haven't even had one meeting yet. But obviously, we don't live in a bubble. We have a lot of people coming from Hants County, Queens, Shelburne, even Lunenburg County. We need to be able to have that cross-border transit system, and we're not a big province, so we have to start thinking about ways that we can advance public transit throughout the entire province, which obviously then changes the culture. People get used to taking transit. They're prepared to set aside a little bit of convenience in order to have a mode of transportation that's better for their pocketbook, better for the environment, and is just a great way to get around. But at the end of the day, we continue to have challenges to meet the needs of our rural, very rural. 80% of HRM is rural, so a rural municipality, and that's why park and rides are so great, to be able to just drive to that park and ride in West Bedford. I'd love to see one that's shared with East Hants, because we do have a lot of commuters coming down on the 102 from East Hants, and also maybe something towards Hubbards or in Ingramport, and be able to tell people, yeah, of course, you just park your car there and get on the bus and come into the city or come into the suburban area and enjoy all that the city has to offer, but you don't have to bring your car downtown. So I think we're getting there. It's just a matter of having partnership at the provincial and federal levels to help us actually get there.
So to push something out as far as almost to the county line to 5A, exit 5A, or the other way towards Truro, I mean, that starts to spread out it's a huge geographic area to begin with, the size of Prince Edward Island, we're told. So you're saying that would have to be, done with the support of the provincial government?
Oh, absolutely. Because part of the problem, of course, is that, the Utility and Review Board is responsible for issuing those transit licenses. And, they look at things from a municipal perspective. And so even though those borders exist municipally, they shouldn't from a public transportation perspective. We want to be able to encourage people to get on a bus in downtown Halifax and go to Chester and have lunch, and then do some shopping, go to the beach in Queensland, and then come on back to their apartment downtown. What a great, affordable way to be traveling the province and experiencing the province. But I think obviously in order to do that, we need to have a partnership at the provincial level to recognize the importance of, being able to get from point A to point B and making it affordable. If it's going to cost you $50, that's not going to be affordable, right? So, we do need to have subsidized public transit throughout this entire province. And I look forward to seeing what this new regional transit committee actually can do for us.
You're an elected representative. You've also been selected to be the deputy mayor, and I'm wondering how you feel about the relationship between the progressive conservative government and municipalities in this province. Halifax is, arguably half the population, the biggest economic generator in the entire province, and there's been some question about where that relationship is. Where do you see it at?
Well, I think it's every relationship is growing. This is a new government, new MLAs that are coming in and learning about municipal government. I hope they are anyway, and understanding how important it is to be collaborative. And also, I think that this is a government that's willing to make some changes. So they have agreed to open up a service exchange negotiation, which means what the province does and what the municipality is responsible for, and how we can actually be much more collaborative together to create that collective change that we need. And I think also, this government, this new progressive conservative government is willing to learn about municipal government. And, I think that we have lots of opportunities to move forward together. But I also have to say that, when they did set in place these special planning areas, I was quite opposed to that. I was opposed to the fact that there was no indication that this was happening. We were not at the table. And I think that honestly was a misstep that the progressive conservatives did. They did did not listen to what it was the municipality was interested in doing and working with them. And so what happens then is decisions get made in a bubble, and that's not always a good thing because there's unintended consequences. And you see that with Eisner's Cove, for example, with people extremely upset with how it is that the provincial government has decided what the planning is going to be. We at the municipal level believe in public consultation. We are the most transparent order of government of all three, and we want to ensure that people's voices are heard. And so the special planning districts go against everything that we believe in that it's removing the public's voice.
And you felt that was a surprise, that wasn't something that you as a council had any inkling of? You didn't know this was going to happen before government announced it?
No, we were not aware of that. We were not aware of the regional transportation network. I mean, we have our own transportation plan. We have our integrated mobility plan. We have our regional plan. We have all these plans. So we're very conscientious and intentional about how we're growing this municipality. And so if somebody wants to work with us, then that's great. Let's do that. But to work against what it is that the municipality is trying to do and building complete, vibrant, communities, that's not helpful to any of us. And so I think it's important. I think it was a misstep, and so I think that the municipal government made it very clear to the provincial government that we want to be able to work together. And so here we are now in a service exchange agreement, the first time for Halifax Regional Municipality to be able to do that. And I'm looking forward to working with the Premier and the Minister of Municipal Affairs, John Lohr.
Deputy Mayor, I did want to bring this back full circle. We talk about provincial responsibilities, we talk about municipal responsibilities, and over the last number of years, there's no secret that there's been a challenge with folks with affordable housing. And in fact, you mentioned the task force, or the province put that in place, they say, to help expedite removal along some of the housing that's so badly needed. But again, people don't live in municipalities. They live where they live. And if they feel they are living in Halifax, I don't think they want to hear, well, that's not our responsibility. I'm just curious. There's been some criticism about what some perceive as inaction. The municipality has been Halifax is trying to say, here's what we have been doing. Mm-hmm. That message has not necessarily reached, I don't think, a wider population who truly believes that's the case. So your thoughts on the record so far and what will happen coming into, here it is, another hurricane around the corner where people who are in a vulnerable state might be forced to be living outside in a tent in a hurricane.
Yeah, I think too, you also have to consider those people who choose to live outside in a tent in a hurricane, right? So, there are some folks who do not feel comfortable in shelters. They do not feel comfortable in a modular unit. They do not feel comfortable in an apartment or a hotel room, or they're just not able to accept that. And I think that we as a population need to accept that. I certainly do. If someone is asking for shelter, absolutely. We need to do everything we can within our power to ensure that they have shelter over their head. And that's why the municipality put money on the table, stood up the modulars, worked with the province to ensure that there were wraparound services for folks who were entering into those modulars. The province hired out of the cold to be able to provide those supports. And this is the first time that a regional council has spent this much money on homelessness and addressing housing. And also, we were able to receive money from the federal government for rapid housing initiatives, which came in the door and out the door as quick as we could get it out the door to get it into the hands of nonprofit organizations. And you can see how quickly Adsum House, for example, was able to get their new housing units up and running, and the Mi'kmaq Friendship Center and so on. And I think that while people are attempting to support folks who are, disadvantaged in the fact that they don't have shelter, or they have lost their houses, lost their shelter from rent evictions and so on. The municipality has limited means by which to stop rent evictions. We have asked that the rent cap, many of us as councillors have asked for the rent cap to remain in place. We are talking together about ways that we can advance housing. This regional council actually had a motion on the floor saying, hey, let's just take over housing from the province. And the reality is that financially, we can't. we don't actually have the means to financially take over. Now, maybe with a service exchange agreement, the provincial government will tell us that we're going to take over homelessness and housing file and more of the social services responsibility, which we had prior to amalgamation. Municipalities prior to 1995 had social services on their docket. In fact, Alexa McDonough was a social worker for the city of Halifax. I'm not sure if you knew that. But we don't have social workers now. We don't have, housing support staff like many of the other larger municipalities. Toronto, they have their own medical officer. We don't have that. But at the same time, in order to have some of these things to provide the services, we need to be able to have the finances and the means to be able to do that and have the people on staff who are the experts to do that. So until we have that, we will continue to work with service providers. We'll continue to work with Carla McFarlane, the Minister of Community Services at the province, and look at our land use bylaw. And recently, we were just able to, designate a number of properties for affordable housing. And I think that's the other thing that we need to really make sure we're talking about is when we're talking about the need for affordable housing, we're talking about attainable, sustainable, accessible, and affordable. It's not just a matter of creating an apartment that's affordable just for the next 2 years and then unaffordable 2 years later. I'd love to see more support for cooperatives and more support for nonprofits, but we need the province at the table to help us with that, as well as the federal government.
District 13 Councillor for Hammonds Plains St. Margaret's, the Deputy Mayor of Halifax Regional Municipality, Pamela Lovelace.
Thank you. Thanks, Sheldon. It was great chatting with you.